but I'm excited to talk to you about the Android Enterprise Recommended Program. So you might ask yourself, what's the big deal about Android, and why should we care about it from an enterprise perspective? Really, Android has just become a platform that has brought so much diversity to the device ecosystem. And depending on what your business looks like, devices may just look like tablets and smartphones from a productivity and knowledge worker perspective, but they may also look like ruggedized devices or field or purpose-built specific devices. Over the last 4 or 5 iterations of the platform, we've also gone from just being something that a platform that offered very consumer-centric capability from a manageability perspective. We've invested a lot of resource into comprehensive and innovative management, everything from separation of work and personal profiles to seamless enrollment and configuration through capabilities like Zero Touch. Also, powerful security is built into the platform. That's not just the scores of security experts that we have that are looking after the latest and greatest from a security patch perspective. It's also things like Google Play Protect, where we're scanning billions of applications on a daily basis to ensure that we are leveraging all of Google's artificial intelligence capabilities to ensure that malware is not going to hit the device through applications, and exploits won't be and things won't be exploited before they even get there. And really, Android benefits from kind of being at the forefront of Google's innovation. We have a very strong culture of innovation. It's a lot of what we're talking about over the whole next couple of days in Google Cloud Next. And Android benefits from that, not just as a mobile platform, but from the broader Google ecosystem. According to IDC, about 280 million Android phones are projected to ship into the business use case in 2018. This number is growing rapidly year over year. About 80% of those are going to be individually liable. That means that individuals are going to be buying those Android devices, bringing them into the work environment, and using them. It might be part of a bring your own device program, but those are going to make it into the enterprise. And 68% of those are going to be a corporate liable environment or a corporate liable use case where the company is actually either creating a choose your own device program or they're providing those devices to the user for use in the business context. The net here is it's a really big market. And it's something that Google really cares about. And it's something we're putting the resources, both engineering, product, and partnerships behind to help make successful. And we look at Android, when we look at enterprise mobility today, I think everybody is very familiar with smartphones and tablets, but it's a really broad and diverse ecosystem. We work with a lot of partners, and actually I think we had a panel earlier today where we had Pitney Bowes up on stage. They were doing purpose-built devices based on the Android platform that look nothing like a smartphone, that it's not a knowledge worker use case. It's all around postage. Built on an Android mobile platform. We've got dedicated device barcode scanners out there. We have ruggedized devices for use in field worker environments, things that need to pass very substantial drop test or water or just general egress type of tests. Also looking at point of sales, kiosks, digital displays. And with the introduction of IoT and the carriers making a major push into the IoT market with 5G over the coming years, we really think that Android is going to be a very important management plane for the IoT market. And because of that choice, we get to work across hundreds of OEMs, thousands of devices that support the Android Enterprise Management Framework, which give us a really diverse set of devices, both from a price point, a feature, and functionality perspective. And while that choice is a real strength of the platform, it often leads customers, IT decision makers, buyers to ask the question, which device should I choose? It can become a complex question because of that, the diversity of choice in the ecosystem. And really what we've come across is a historical set of concerns from customers around how can we solve for things like fragmentation and security. The main concerns that we hear, and I'd be curious if folks here share those, are updates. How do we make sure that a fleet of devices are up to date, even though they may be from different OEMs, running different versions of the platform? How do you do that? How do you keep them up to date across hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of devices? Consistency. You're buying different devices on different platforms from different OEMs. Do they support all the management capabilities that you need them to support? Will they support the same use cases? Can they all be managed in a similar way? And then security. We've all kind of seen the use case where two devices side by side, this one has this security patch level, and this one has a different one. How do I know I have a consistent security posture and that I have good security freshness across my ecosystem? This is what led us to develop the Android Enterprise Recommended Program. We wanted to develop a program for the market focused initially on devices that would really raise the bar for OEMs and help to give IT decision makers and IT managers, and mobility practice leaders the confidence in selecting, deploying, and managing Android devices and services. We wanted to raise that bar and add more consistency. With the launch of the program, we really wanted to make sure that we were able to address or touch on three primary goals. How do we drive confidence in selection, consistency in deployment, and how do we make sure devices and services ultimately are current with updates? So when we talk about confidence in selection, we wanted to give a North Star. We wanted to create the rough equivalent of a good housekeeping seal where if someone, an IT decision maker, was out trying to evaluate devices for a BYOD, CYOD, or corporate liable deployment, they knew that they could look at the badging, the Android Enterprise Recommended Badge, and that would be a visual indicator of where my shortlist should start. Instead of going out and evaluating 10 devices from 5 different OEMs and going through a very exhaustive process to understand what should I be deploying, if you're bought into the Android Enterprise Recommended specification as being something that meets your needs, then you can start to use that as your visual shortlist, help to simplify that decision-making process and give you confidence in that selection. Consistency in deployment. I don't think it's realistic for anyone to say, I am going to have a homogeneous fleet of devices across the globe for all worker types. I'm going to deploy this device, and that is it. So what we wanted to do was ensure that not all devices looked the same, not that we took the ability to differentiate away from OEMs, but that when it came to management capability, when it came to provisioning a device into a management mode, that those looked highly similar from device to device. That way, an IT administrator does not have to focus on learning the specific workflow of a Huawei device versus a Nokia device versus a Samsung device. Those things should just look the same, and you should be able to manage them consistently across the globe. And then current with updates. We believe very strongly that a strength of Android is the diversity, but for us to have that really be a true strength, we have to really minimize that fragmentation. You can't have one device that is not receiving a security update for 6 months and another that's receiving it for 30. So for every 30 days. So we wanted to make sure that there was a consistent level of security patches that were going to be applied to any Android Enterprise recommended device. So those might sound good as concepts. What does it actually mean for a device to be an Android Enterprise recommended device? First, we start with a minimum hardware specification. This is not to say you have to have a specific chipset or it needs to be this particular form factor, screen size, etc. But we need to know that the device is actually going to be able to run things like work profile proficiently. We need to know it's going to be able to accomplish things like NFC provisioning or QR code provisioning. So we have a spec that is robust enough to meet all of our requirements from an Android Enterprise platform capability perspective, but not so aggressive where we're limiting this specification only to flagship devices. Flagships are great for executives. Probably all of us here, either have or want to have one. But when we start to talk about what devices are getting deployed en masse across the fleet of workers, out in the field, et cetera, we're looking at mid-range to low mid-range. So we want to make sure that we're helping to make sure that the program applies to that device class as well. Also, when we started this and we launched this program back in February of this year, we said that the earliest platform version we were going to validate against was Nougat or Android 7. Really what we were doing right there is drawing a line in the sand and saying that you need to be a current, with one dessert release or one platform release, a current platform to participate here. Because what we don't want to do is figure out how do we retrofit all of this program onto all the other devices that have been in market for years and years. Wanted to be something that moved the ecosystem forward starting today. We also wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be something that was pigeonholed by a specific carrier relationship. I am looking for a Motorola device. That Motorola device is only available through Verizon and someone in Europe. Therefore, if I don't have those relationships, I can't get this device. OEMs that participate must make their device available in an unlocked fashion and have that be available either directly from the OEM or through the distribution or value-add reseller channel. We do that because we don't want someone to go through the process of selecting a device or a small subset of devices and then having to go and source a different subset around the globe. You should be able to settle on a handful of devices and deploy those globally. Also, we want to make sure that from the initial device ship, all AER, Android Enterprise Recommended Devices, are guaranteed at least one dessert upgrade. Again, part of the reason it's one and not multiple is because we want it to apply to mid-range and fleet phone devices. That being said, when you start to look at some of the flagship devices, you're going to get +2, and in some cases you might get more with some of the devices that are participating in other programs like Android One, for example. Security, we've set a baseline of a minimum of 90-day security freshness. If there are devices in the program that fall outside of that, there's a small window to be able to remediate it. We're tracking that on our own. We are validating these devices in addition to what the OEM is attesting to. We will go back and work with the OEM to make sure that those devices are actually being held to that security freshness level. And if they're not, that's a discussion that we'll have with the OEM. And if a carrier is involved in that chain of custody, we also want to make sure that we're working with the carriers as well. Bulk device enrollment. I think the ability to enroll 1 or 2 devices for a BYOD program, that's fine. When you look at ecosystems like Europe, when you look at things like choose your own device programs, IT administrators want to be able to enroll, tens, hundreds, thousands of devices in bulk over the air. So we're making sure that all devices in the program that are Oreo and above are supporting zero touch. That way you have that ability to do, en masse over-the-air enrollment. And then, one of the areas I think is really important is the unified experience. We talked about this from a manageability perspective. How do I make sure that I can manage these devices through the same APIs? I can manage these devices knowing that it's only going to be, for example, 5 screens to get into a fully work-managed environment. So we want to drive consistency there, but we also want to make sure that if you're provisioning a work profile, or if you're receiving a device that's going to be fully corporate owned, that there's not all of the consumer bloat from an application perspective that may be on a device if you just walked into the carrier and purchased it directly as a consumer device. So we're not precluding carriers from doing preloads. What we are doing is saying there's an approved list of applications that can actually exist in these managed environments. That way, users don't have to go through and wade through a bunch of consumer applications before they get to their productivity applications. So this touches a lot of different parts of the overall value chain. What are some of the benefits? I've broken these down by partner types. Some of these, by the show of hands earlier, are going to be relevant. Some of them may not. But from an OEM perspective, if you're building towards this program, you're building towards a specification that, not that Google created in an ivory tower or in a black box, but something that we've created with the help of our enterprise customers. So this specification is going to meet their needs for the vast majority of use cases. It's also going to be something where Google partners closely with the OEMs that are part of this program. So while we're not going to lead the go-to-market on behalf of an OEM, we will absolutely support them, and that will look like something that not only is Nokia out trying to sell a device into a given opportunity, but Google is there standing besides them, saying we've validated this. This is meeting the specifications of our program. For IT buyers, really one of the benefits here is that simplicity in selection. It's also knowing that you can get any of these devices worldwide unlocked and you're not going to be pigeonholed into specific carrier relationships. And also just helping to create more long-term value. This device is going to have longevity with at least one dessert upgrade and the consistency from a security update perspective. For admins, it's about giving consistent performance, and part of that has to do with the way the platform is configured. Also has to do with the way that, with the hardware specification that we've put together. And if you have that consistency in performance, you can also get consistency from a troubleshooting perspective. If an OEM is doing something that's one-off for an OEM, we have a really hard time as the platform provider helping them troubleshoot that or helping a customer troubleshoot that. As we drive consistency there, we can actually step in and we can help to better support the devices that our OEM partners are shipping and delivering into the enterprise. Ultimately, we believe this leads to lower support costs and helps to ensure that there's going to be secure and managed updates available to the fleet of devices. And for employees, we're talking just faster time to productivity. You don't have to wade through Clash of Clans, which we may all love, to try to get to your productivity applications or your messaging applications or the ones that your IT administrator or EMM are provisioning because it's core to your use case. We think it's going to be a cleaner experience, faster time to productivity, and just getting people up and running faster. And leading up to the launch of this program, we talked to a lot of analysts, we talked to a lot of press. And the general sentiment within that ecosystem was, it's about time Google is stepping up and having an opinion, having a perspective, and being prescriptive to a good degree on what an enterprise Android device should look like. So ultimately, our objective is not to just put some arbitrary requirements out there. It's how can we really raise the bar for enterprise devices that are built on the Android platform, reducing fragmentation and reducing drift. And when we launched this program back in February of this year, we launched with 21 devices and 7 OEM partners. Overall, we had a good mix of high-end flagships and some mid-range devices. But since that launch, so about 5 months ago now, we're actually up to 42 devices and 9 OEMs. We've got dozens more in the queue from a validation perspective. We've got new partners that are coming on board. So we're really pleased with the direction that this has been going in. We've also done some survey of customers, asking them about kind of their level of awareness of Android Enterprise Recommended, and how or if they might be using that from a decision-making, in a decision-making capability going forward. And what we came away with was 75% of the folks that we surveyed. This was a global survey. It was of existing customers and prospects. The respondents were heavily weighted towards Europe, just for transparency. But 75% said that the Android Enterprise Recommended program will play at least a medium priority role in their device selection going forward. Now, we did this back in May. So this was only 2 or 3 months after the program had actually launched. And as we saw by the show of hands, there's clearly work we need to do from an awareness perspective here today. But we do believe that as we add more devices, as we gain more momentum, as a lot of the things we're doing to really promote this initiative, not only from a device perspective, but within the broader ecosystem, we do think the Android Enterprise Recommended program will help to really just add signal to the broader noise of the ecosystem. And in fact, one of the great quotes we got was from John Burton over at HSBC, where we're looking at a very large user of Android devices, and just a very regulated industry, saying, we believe in this program where we are only going to be considering Android enterprise recommended devices going forward. Because this helps them create a baseline from a manageability perspective. It helps them provide more flexibility to their users, but still know from an IT perspective that they're operating in a known good environment. So we expect to see more of this. And I think one of the panels earlier today also talked about that. So I've talked almost exclusively about devices. And that's where we started because we thought that's where the most work was to be done. The Android Enterprise Recommended program, we think, can be applied to almost all of the partner types in the overall mobility value chain. So some of the things we're working on, new partner types, new device types, and new customer engagements. So recently, within the last probably 6 weeks, we've had a handful of tablets join the program. Tablets still very much in the knowledge worker use case, but now starting to look into things like kiosk use cases or point of sale use cases. We will be launching a ruggedized device program in the not too distant future. These are the devices that will be used out in the field by workers in less of a knowledge worker use case, but devices that need to pass drop test and be ruggedized for being out in on delivery trucks, out in the oil field, et cetera. We'll be bringing new partner types to market from an Android Enterprise Recommended perspective. EMMs are going to be a big push for us. Over the last year and a half or so, we've done a lot of work with the EMM community, trying to make sure that they are integrating with our APIs in the correct way, in a way where the platform can support where they're supporting the right management capabilities and the platform becomes the source of truth. But we've left a lot of goodness on the table. So we're working with the EMM community to really kind of raise the bar on their engagement with us to ensure that we can have the highest level of integration with EMMs and the Android enterprise capabilities in the platform. We're also going to be rolling out something focused on an Android Enterprise Recommended program focused on service partners. Today, you see a lot of folks in the SI and global SI market focused on mobility. There's not necessarily a vast amount of knowledge around Android expertise out there. Yes, people have done deployments, but we want to create Android experts out there. We want to work with the global systems integrators, the regional systems integrators, the VARs, the distributors, to make sure that they understand how to run a deployment of Android Enterprise with their customer, because frankly, that's where a lot of the scale is going to come from within this ecosystem. And we think that we've only been engaging here for a number of months, and the pull demand we feel from this channel is already overwhelming in a very positive way. And then some of the other things we're thinking about, we are thinking about what would an Android Enterprise Recommended ISV program look like. You may say, well, if I'm building Android apps, my Android apps should just work with an Android Enterprise environment. Generally, that's correct. But when you start to think about what an enterprise might expect, they might expect leveraging things like our safety net APIs. They might expect a device to be, an application to be aware that it's running within a work profile. These are all nuances of the platform. We want to make sure that there are things that are called out so there can be a great ISV and application experience in an enterprise space, leveraging the Android platform capabilities, but also broader parts of the Google ecosystem. And then we're also working on a program for carriers. Starting with the devices is great. Devices are certainly a key part of that value chain. But if carriers aren't going to be on board with 90-day security updates, if carriers aren't going to be on board, with facilitating a lot of the last mile delivery of the goodness of the device program and these other parts of the program, then we're really going to miss part of this delivery. So that's something we're spending a lot of time on now, is working with key carrier partners around the globe. how could you engage depending on where you fall or if you fall here? I think customer is probably the most prevalent in the room, so I'll start there. If you are looking at what does my mobility strategy look like going forward, really the one thing I'd encourage you to do is, look at android.com/enterprise and just become familiar with the program. But even more simple, look for the Android Enterprise recommended badge around devices today and services tomorrow, and just use that as a visible indicator of the partner, the person who's going to deliver that device or service, saying we've done things that Google believes are the right things based on their customer engagements, but then also know that those are services and devices that Google is standing behind. If you do fall into one of these partnership categories I'm talking about, come talk to us. We have a lot of this posted online. Some of the up and coming programs are not, the criteria is not publicly published. But come and talk to myself. I've got Mike over here in the back. If Mike, you want to raise your hand, probably. Come talk to us, and we can steer you in the right direction and make sure you get access to information. And then if you are an existing partner, let's just keep working together the way that we are. Just want to leave this up here. We've got a bunch of other really great Android Enterprise sessions going on over the next couple of days. One's a little bit later today, which if you haven't been fully briefed on what's coming in Android P, I certainly would encourage you to head over to the Metron and check that out. But a lot of really good content here. With that, I want to just say thank you for your time. I'll ask if there's any questions, and hopefully everybody knows a little bit more about Android Enterprise Recommended.